So uMkhonto WeSizwe party has been dealt a blow after the Constitutional Court found that its leader, Jacob Zuma, is not eligible to contest for a seat in the National Assembly. But the party remains adamant that yesterday's judgment will not impact its performance at the polls just next week. The Apex Court set aside an earlier decision by the Electoral Court allowing the former president to be on Parliament's candidate list. Zuma will now have to wait 5 years before running for Parliament. In this conversation now, let's bring in political analyst Asanda Ngoasheng for more. Asanda, a good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I think let's start here, right? Are you surprised by the ruling by the ConCourt yesterday?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm not surprised at all. I had said a couple of times already that, the Constitutional Court is likely to actually say that he cannot be and should not be on the ballot because of the specific rules. And I think that, they are effectively following the law to its letter, which is exactly what the Constitutional Court is supposed to do. And I've said before that, when the MK started, there was, sadly, this idea that the MK was the ANC's problem and no one else in South Africa's democratic institutions had to do anything because they would be seen as interfering in ANC and MK politics. But I did say that, they will have to intervene, and the sooner the better, because we have a democracy that we need to protect, including from ensuring that the people who stand up for office are people who are upstanding citizens, are people who have the moral authority to be able to do that, because you don't want somebody to walk off from, having been in power and corrupted that power and then come back and be president. We've seen this in Venezuela. We've seen this in many, many other countries, and it's had detrimental effects when somebody who had been in power before leaves because of, there's a cloud hanging over them. And then when they come back, they want to come back into power and start with erasing the crimes or the corruption that they've been alleged to have been part of from the record.
Let me get your view on this. I mean, as we've been watching the MK party on its road towards the 29th of May elections, a lot of the questions have been whether or not the MK party is a threat to the African National Congress. Now, with the leader, former President Jacob Zuma, unable to get a seat in the National Assembly, does that make them less of a threat to the African National Congress?
I don't think they're necessarily less of a threat to the African National Congress, but I do think that the threat that they are is overstated, in the sense that, this is not the first political party to break away from the ANC. The ANC literally has a history of breakaway parties, all the way from PAC to COPE being, the last kind of breakaway, and even EFF, if you think about it, is an ANC breakaway party, and none of the political parties that have broken away have been able to break the ANC's majority. And I don't think MK is going to be any different. I think that they are going to make a dent. They are going to remove some votes from the ANC, but they're also going to remove some votes from the opposition, which we don't talk about enough. So it's not as if it's only the ANC that's going to be affected by, their presence.
Yeah, there is, of course, the issue of Jabulani Khumalo, who now is approaching the Electoral Court to attempt to have Jacob Zuma removed as the leader of the MK party. I mean, do you think that he's going to be successful? Has he simply been outplayed here by the now current leader of the party? And do you think that matters to the electorate in any way, shape or form?
I mean, I think it depends on the technicalities of his argument, whether he's going to be successful or not. In the same way that, I thought that there was a case for copyright infringement when it comes to the MLK. I mean, I was just looking at the rally and the black, green, and gold, and the way in which the design could very easily be mistaken for the ANC. Never mind, the name has always been associated with the ANC's armed forces, essentially. And I think that, the MK was deliberately built and set up to be a party that was going to be shrouded in controversy, from the name to the colors to the choice of leader. And this was done deliberately so that there could be, they were going to ensure that it was going to be a political party that was going to be on our mind minds and in our conversations as a nation in the run-up to the election, so that they wouldn't really have to spend much money by way of budget, but we would be talking about them and they would be headline making. And they've been successful in that. And the courts, for various reasons, doesn't seem to agree that there is copyright infringement. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what comes of the MK after the election. I don't think they'll even get to a 10% win, never mind a 5%, but they will definitely make some showing, and particularly in the province where Jacob Zuma is seen to be, have a stronghold, which is KZN. But at the same time, this is the same KZN that suffered major losses in terms of life, over 300 people who died, and also 50 billion rands that left the South African fiscus as a result of those July 2021 riots. So I don't think we can also make a foregone conclusion that people in KZN are definitely going to vote for him, while some may.
Yeah.
We can't be guaranteed that he has the popularity that people are talking about, because people have seen how destructive he and some of the leaders of the MK can be, because a lot of the leaders of the MK were alleged to have been part of the riots, and even went as far as court to argue against the cases that were put against them, that they were part of riling people up, including especially Duduzane, who, although wasn't necessarily officially charged, we all saw her on Twitter and we all saw how she did incite violence.
Yeah, you're speaking, I think you said she, so I'm guessing you mean Duduzile. And speaking
Duduzile,
of, yes, yeah. So and speaking of which, we were chatting about it earlier with Aldrin around what the party then does now with its leadership moving forward, and who would represent the party in the National Assembly. And of course, the argument of, it would be Duduzile Zuma as one of the options there, Des van Rooyen, an option that possibly could be looked at, Visvin Reddy, another one. What's their strongest candidate in your view?
I mean, I don't know that the weekend minister, it has the kind of popularity that's needed to lead a party, but I think they definitely will be going with Duduzile to make sure that the Zuma name kind of continues to be the one that's at the top of the list, and to almost do a situation where Jacob Zuma borrows his power and his influence to his daughter. And of course, if you understand African politics in terms of the entire continent, this is not something, that should come as a surprise. We've seen this happen. We've seen this happen in the DRC Congo, where leadership went from a father to a son. We've seen this happen in Angola, where, the daughter of a former president became the richest woman and effectively became the most influential person until a new political party came into power.
Yep.
And tried to hold her accountable for her father's corruption. So it wouldn't be surprising if she was, placed almost as a stand-in for him. This has been done before. As I said, if you understand African politics, you'll know that this is where the arena that we are playing in, right down to even the threats of unrest and the ways in which this particular election has been run by the MK. They hark back to a lot of what happens across the continent. It's just surprising to South Africans because for the most part, we have been spared a lot of that type of politics. But Zuma loves the politics of the big man of Africa. He literally is a cookie cutter of that type of politics and thrives in that type of politics. And so he's following that, specific strategy. And so everything he does really does come out of that book.
I needed to edge my way in there to squeeze this question in. The MK party now saying it's considering approaching the United Nations Human Rights Committee to appeal the ConCourt ruling. I mean, how successful, plausible, feasible is that?
Well, I mean, they're not going to get very far because the ConCourt is the final arbitrator in South Africa on constitutional law. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they think the UN can intervene or come to a different understanding. But of course, they're going to try everything that they can. It is literally what they do. Jacob Zuma thrives on building an ideology around him being the victim. This is what he did in 2008 when he wanted the seat from President Thabo Mbeki, who had essentially kicked him out of the party and out of his seat as the deputy president. So this is the strategy that worked for him and got him the presidency. And he's using the same strategy again, which is why, to me, it's always surprising when people pretend as if Jacob Zuma is this new alternative power when he was in power and did, all the failures of South Africa as it stands, sit squarely on his shoulders together with other ANC leaders.
Yeah, Asanda, an absolute pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for speaking to us. Political analyst there, Asanda Ngoasheng.